Welcome back to Connecting the Dots, and for this week we have a very special deeper dot for you.
A deeper dot.
That's right. Sometimes there's a tech story so big, so juicy, that it deserves more than just a quick mention, right?
Definitely. I'm intrigued. What is it this week?
Well, this week it's all about President Trump and his executive order on crypto. Specifically, the one to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve and also a U.S. digital asset stockpile.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. It definitely grabbed my attention. And it's not just a random move either. Seems like Trump's been laying the groundwork for a major crypto push for a while now.
I was just thinking the same thing. Back in January, he issued that order to study crypto stockpiles. Plus, he even appointed a crypto czar.
Yeah, crypto czar. And don't forget about the upcoming White House crypto summit, too. It's all connected. It's like he's been planning this big crypto play all along.
Yeah, exactly. And this executive order is a huge piece of that puzzle. But what does it actually mean? What are the real implications of all this, especially for Americans?
Right, right. Well, essentially, this order has two main parts. Okay, so first, there's the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and this is where they're treating Bitcoin like, I don't know, some kind of digital gold.
Digital gold. Okay.
And then the second part is creating a U.S. digital asset stockpile. Now, that one's for all the other cryptocurrencies out there.
So they're separating Bitcoin from the rest. Why do you think that is? Is it because Bitcoin has that potential to be a long-term store of value, like you said, like digital gold?
I think that's definitely a part of it. I mean, they've specifically said they're not planning to sell anything from that Bitcoin reserve.
I see. So are they saying that the digital asset stockpile is different? Like they might actually sell from that one?
It sounds like it, yeah. They're probably going to be more tactical with that stockpile. Buying and selling based on the market, that kind of thing.
Makes sense. But now the big question everyone's going to be asking is, where's the money coming from? Are they going to dip into taxpayer dollars for this whole crypto experiment?
Actually, no, at least not initially. The first round of funding is coming from all that crypto they've seized from criminal cases.
Oh, I see. So, like, they're taking that found money and putting it right back into crypto. Interesting. But hold on, didn't the government get some heat a while back for how they handled seized Bitcoin before?
They did. There was a lot of criticism. Some people were saying they sold it off at a loss, and that ended up costing taxpayers money.
Yeah, right. That rings a bell. So are they saying they've learned their lesson now, that this time it's going to be different?
Well, that's what they're implying. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But speaking of crypto holdings, have you ever wondered just how much cryptocurrency the U.S. government actually owns?
Honestly, I haven't given it much thought. But now I'm curious. Do we even know?
We do, and it's probably more than you think. Right now, current estimates are saying they're holding a massive $18.28 billion worth.
Wow. Okay, 18 billion? That's not small change. So where's all that money invested? Just Bitcoin?
Mostly Bitcoin, yeah. I mean, we're talking billions in Bitcoin alone. But they also have Ether, even some Tether, which is, a stable coin.
Okay, so it's more diverse than I thought. But didn't Trump say something about wanting XRP, Solana, and Cardano?
He did, yeah. He was talking about those back when he was pushing for the U.S. to be the crypto capital of the world.
Right. So what's up with that? Are those just words, or will they actually buy into those coins too?
Well, the data we have right now doesn't show any significant holdings in those, so who knows? Maybe that'll change, maybe not.
Okay, so maybe actions speak louder than words, as they say.
Yeah.
But this is all pretty high-level stuff. Let's bring it back down to earth for a second. What does any of this actually mean for everyday Americans?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? This is uncharted territory, and it's hard to predict exactly how it'll all play out, but there are definitely some potential impacts to consider.
Okay, like what? Give us an example.
Well, for one, think about the U.S. dollar. Holding Bitcoin as a reserve asset, kind of like how they hold gold, could potentially stabilize the dollar. Or maybe it'll offer some protection against inflation.
So there's potential for it to help the economy.
It's possible, but, a lot of this is just theory right now. We'll have to wait and see what happens. And it's not just about the U.S. either.
What do you mean?
Think about the global impact. The U.S. taking this step could trigger other countries to do the same, It could kick off some kind of global crypto race.
A crypto race. Now that's an image. Countries scrambling to buy up Bitcoin like it's the new oil or something.
Exactly. And who knows what kind of impact that would have on the markets. It's a pretty wild thought.
It is. But it's not just about governments, right? What about everyday people? Do you think this will affect how they view crypto?
Oh, absolutely. When the US government makes a move like this, it definitely sends a signal. It gives crypto a certain legitimacy that it didn't have before. And that could have a big impact on how people perceive it, whether they decide to invest in it, all of that.
So this could be a big turning point for crypto, huh? Like, mainstream acceptance is finally here.
It certainly seems like a step in that direction. It's like we're at a crossroads, and the choices we make now will shape the future of finance. But of course, not everyone's thrilled about all this.
Right. There are definitely some valid concerns out there about crypto and the government's role in it. But we'll save those for the next part of our deeper dive.
Sounds good. We've got a lot more to unpack. Welcome back to Connecting the Dots. We're continuing our deep dive into President Trump's executive order on crypto.
Yeah, we covered a lot in the first part. But, one thing that keeps sticking in my mind is just how much crypto the U.S. government is sitting on.
Billions, right?
Billions, yep. It's mind-boggling. And the fact that they're holding on to that Bitcoin like it's some kind of digital Fort Knox, that's a pretty big deal.
Right, like they're actually buying into that whole digital gold idea. But is it really digital gold? What do you think? Well, gold and Bitcoin, they both have a limited supply, and that's a big part of why people see them as a hedge against inflation. But, I mean, gold's got thousands of years of history behind it. Bitcoin's still pretty new, relatively speaking.
So it's a question of history versus potential, I guess. But, going back to the executive order, I'm curious about the global implications. You talked about a crypto race earlier. Can you expand on that a little?
Sure. Imagine a world where countries are going all in on Bitcoin, not just as a hedge against inflation, but as a strategic asset,
Huh.
like a source of economic power.
Whoa. So it's not just about economics. It could actually shift the balance of power between countries.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, it could lead to all sorts of things: increased competition, maybe even some tension on the world stage.
Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not all doom and gloom, right? There's also potential for cooperation, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as crypto gets bigger, we're going to need some ground rules. This executive order could be what kickstarts that global dialogue, countries coming together to figure out how to manage all this.
Okay, so it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Competition, collaboration, all that. But let me ask you this. Is this the beginning of the end for the dollar as we know it? Is crypto going to take over?
That's the big question, isn't it? No one knows for sure. I mean, crypto has the potential to disrupt things, no doubt. But there are still some big hurdles to overcome: volatility, scalability, all that.
I've been thinking about just using Bitcoin in everyday life. Like, could I go to the grocery store and pay with it? Would I even want to?
Well, that's where adoption comes in. For crypto to really replace traditional money, it needs to be easy for people to use. And not just technically, but like culturally too.
So it's not just about the tech, it's about whether people are ready for it.
Hmm.
Okay, that makes sense. So what are some of the benefits of using crypto as money?
Well, one big one is decentralization. It's not controlled by a government or a bank. It's controlled by a network, by the people, essentially. And for some people, that's a big deal, especially if they don't trust those institutions or if they live in a country with a shaky economy.
Right, so it's about giving people more control over their own money. What
And
else?
security.
Yeah.
Crypto transactions are really hard to hack, and that can help reduce fraud and stuff like that. And then there's the privacy aspect, for people who are worried about their financial information being tracked.
Those are some pretty strong arguments in favor of crypto, I have to say. But what about the downsides? We've already talked about volatility, but what are some of the other challenges?
Well, one is scalability. The Bitcoin network, for example, it can only handle a limited number of transactions at a time, and that can lead to delays and higher fees, especially when things get busy. And then there's the complexity factor. Crypto can be pretty intimidating for people who aren't tech savvy.
So there's definitely a learning curve there.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's get back to the executive order. Do you think this is going to help crypto go mainstream, or could it actually slow things down?
It's hard to say for sure. It might make people more comfortable with the idea of crypto, seeing the government get involved. But then again, more government involvement could also mean more regulation. And some people think that could stifle innovation.
It's a tough balance. Encourage innovation, protect consumers. It's a lot to juggle.
Mhm.
And it's a global issue too, right?
Absolutely. This is going to take international cooperation to really figure it out. The future of money is kind of hanging in the balance here, and the choices we make now will have huge consequences.
Wow, we've covered so much ground, from the nuts and bolts of this executive order to the big philosophical questions about the future of money. But before we wrap up completely, there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to talk about.
What's that?
The societal implications of this whole shift toward crypto. We'll get into that in the final part of our deep dive. Welcome back to Connecting the Dots. We're wrapping up our deep dive into President Trump's executive order on cryptocurrency.
And in this final part, we're going to be looking at the big picture, like how might this whole crypto thing affect society as a whole?
Exactly. We've talked about the economics, the technology, all that, but we can't forget about the human side of things.
Right, like how might this impact people's lives, on a day-to-day basis?
Exactly. And one area that I've been thinking about is economic inequality. Some people are saying that crypto could help level the playing field.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, especially for people who are shut out of traditional financial systems. Like, imagine someone in a developing country who doesn't have access to a bank. Crypto could give them a way to participate in the global economy.
That's a powerful idea. But couldn't it also make things worse? Like, what if crypto just ends up making the rich richer?
That's definitely a risk. I mean, if crypto becomes the main way that people build wealth, those who already have money and understand the technology are going to have a huge advantage.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Right.
It could create more equality, but it could also create new forms of inequality.
Right. And we have to be really careful about that. We need to make sure that everyone benefits from this technology, not just a select few.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about privacy? I mean, a lot of people are already concerned about how much data is being collected on them. Does crypto make that better or worse?
That's a really good question, and there's no easy answer. On the one hand, crypto transactions can be, pseudonymous, but on the other hand, all that data is stored on a public blockchain.
Right. So anyone can see it.
Technically, yes, and that raises some serious questions about privacy and surveillance.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a concern,
Oh,
especially with governments and corporations already having so much access to our data.
it's a tricky balance. How do we protect people's privacy while also making sure that crypto isn't being used for, illegal activities?
It's a tough one, for sure. And while we're talking about security, what about cybercrime? I mean, we've already seen those big crypto heists.
Oh, definitely. That's a huge risk. The technology itself might be pretty secure, but people make mistakes. They lose their passwords, they fall for scams.
So even though it's digital, there's still that human element that can create vulnerabilities.
Exactly.
Okay, but let's take this even further. How might all of this affect our relationship with government?
Ah, now you're asking the really big questions. I mean, if crypto really does start to challenge traditional currencies, how are governments going to react?
Right, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, some governments might embrace it, right? See it as a chance to innovate.
Yeah, they might see it as a way to create more efficient financial systems, or maybe even more equitable ones. But other governments, they might see it as a threat to their power.
And that could create some real tension, huh?
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out on the global stage. It's like we're entering a whole new era. The lines between technology, finance, and government are getting blurred.
It's exciting and a little bit scary all at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. But the important thing is that we have a choice in how this all unfolds. We need to be having these conversations, thinking critically about the implications, and making informed decisions.
Well said. This executive order is just the beginning. The world of finance is changing, and we're all along for the ride.
It's going to be a wild ride, that's for sure.
It has been a fascinating conversation. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into the world of cryptocurrency and its potential impact on society.
It was my pleasure, and I hope everyone listening will continue to explore these issues and engage in these important discussions.
We are here to help here at Snarful, so reach out on our website if you have any more questions.